I just want to do a short video of what I do to have consistent results that allows me to use components, really small components, with small pads and very tight clearances. For instance, this would be your normal Atmega 328 processor that everyone uses. It's an Atmega or Attiny 88, which is the one I'm using on these two boards. And this one has pads that are 8 mils and 9.8 mils support, I think. This is a gyroscope. It's really, really small. Well, the pads are really small, and it has a lot of them. Another gyroscope. It's an MPU, 9250, really tiny. Your regular capacitor, 1206 versus a 603 capacitor, really tiny. So my process, or what I do to have consistent results where I don't have to redo them until I get the perfect board. Every time I do one, it comes out correctly. So there's no wasted time. And since it's a repeatable process, it gets faster and faster every time I do it. So let me first go through the tools that I use to do my printing and also my laminator. So when I started this, I used to use a laser jet or a laser printer, and you can see this is a print from my laser printer. Not very dark. It doesn't block the light at all. You can see it. Whatever comes through very bright. Even if you print it twice and stack it together, it's still pretty bright. This is I got my printer, which is an inkjet printer, and you can see that it's really dark. And you should be able to see that the light does not come through, right? And if it does, it's very little. It's printed on the darkest settings. It also it's printed twice on the same paper, so it's the equivalent of printing twice and putting the paper together, except that this is perfectly aligned all the time. You can print it multiple times. I do it twice because that's all I need. I don't need any more than that. So what the printer that I use is the Canon Pixma IX6820, and the reason I bought this one is because from the reviews I saw, its print is really dense and it has a big resolution. So the height resolution is 9600 by 2400 dots per inch. That is pretty high versus what a laser printer will do, which is usually 1200 by 1200. If you want to spend a lot of money, you can get 24 by 24, but that's too much money for me, at least. The inkjet printer is not cheap either. It's $200, but it's not considered pricey compared to the LaserJet. And the ink for this printer is really cheap, and it lasts quite a while. It's not like the cheap inkjet printers that the ink doesn't last that long and it's super pricey. So you either pay it in ink or you pay your price in hardware. I'd rather pay my price in hardware and then just keep buying ink since it's inexpensive. You need special paper as well. The paper that I use is called Milky Transparency Positive Film, which is this one here. It's a little bit sticky and rough on one side, the side that is printed, and nice and smooth on the opposite side. The laminator I have is the Tamerica SM330. And the reason I bought this is because the temperature is adjustable, and I make it adjustable. I usually use 3 settings depending on what I'm doing. If I'm doing solder mask, I have it at 0 temperature and just run it through it once. If I'm doing photoresist, I have it at number 2 and run it through it twice. If I'm doing toner transfer, where I may want to do component placement, then I set it to in between 5 and 6 and run the board through it 10 times, and it comes out good every time. On all those 3 processes, always comes out good. The photoresist that I use is the regular cheapy one you find online for $15–16. I tend to go through this like every 6 months, doing a roll of 16 feet. The developing solution is done with just your regular soda ash. The ratio is really important for me. So I tend to have, I always have a 4% soda ash to 1 liter of water. So it's weight by to volume. So 4% grams of soda ash to 1 liter of water. So in this case, it would be 40 grams per liter of water. And this is really important because if you don't have it strong enough, you're going to have difficulties developing your bores. And if you put them in this solution too long, then it weakens everything else. And then when you go etch it, you have not so good results where you may have lifted pads or the photoresist may start lifting a little bit and it eats through the wires. And now you have cut traces, and you may have bridges as well because you couldn't develop it properly because it's not strong enough. So 4% seems to be perfect for my application. I did a lot of testing before I went with that 4%, so I wouldn't have any failures. Your board needs to be really clean before you attach the photoresist or the solder mask, either of the two. It needs to be really clean, and the way you clean it is you need to have a strong solution, cleaning solution. So in my case, I have a highly alkaline solution. It's KOH. This is 5 grams of KOH to 100 milliliters of water with soap in it. This is just dish soap. So make sure you clean it really good. When you add water to it, you'll see how clean it is because the water doesn't beat, right? It just stays wet. See? It's just wet. It's not beating like here. You can see it here and there. That's clean. So that's what you want. You want a clean board. Put it there. Put the resist on top, run it through your laminator twice at 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Put your negative on top of it. If you're using glass, make sure that you don't put a lot of pressure on it, because if you put too much pressure on the glass, it'll bend. And since this is sucked into the glass, it'll bend with it, and now you're going to have issues with the light seeping through it on the bottom. And this will prevent you from doing it. The other thing is that when you develop it, you want to use a spray bottle. You don't want to dunk it into the liquid and then start scrubbing it or start using a brush to brush it off, because essentially what you're doing is you're weakening the resist on top of it, especially on the small traces. So by using a spray bottle and just spraying it, waiting a few seconds, spraying it again, it should take about 3 minutes, about 30 sprays or less. And then every time you spray it, it washes off the developed part and it exposes fresh resist, and it just keeps spraying it until it goes away and it comes out really clean, sharp edges, rounded corners, everything comes out perfect. So yeah, that's about it. Well, let me show you some of the pictures, or a couple of pictures that I took yesterday when I was doing this. So this is the board with the a tiny 88, and you can see it's 32 pins. There's no bridges of resist in it. Everything's clear. Everything's well defined. Obviously, the camera was focusing on the bottom, so you can see it is sharp. There's no resist residue anywhere. It's just sharp cuts. Wherever you have circles is perfectly round. There's no bridges again. There's sharp lines. Everything seems to be good. This is a picture of the same board after it's been etched, and you can see all the pads are exposed. This came up when I was trying to clean it with tape to remove the lint of the napkin I was using to clean it. But you can see how everything is nice and sharp, right? There's no, all the copper is gone, especially from these small areas like this ones. Most people have issues clearing this part or etching this part because they'll have some type of paper or ink or something there that they didn't clean, and the acid didn't go through. So everything should be clean. There's nothing there. There's no copper. And this is the one without the resist on it. So once I took that off, you can see those are the pads. Everything's nice, well defined. Right? There's no copper where there's no need to be copper, or there's no bridges anywhere, and there's no broken traces anywhere either. This one, the pads are a little thinner because I was testing on this one as well. And what I did is I put the bottom half 15 minutes in acid, the left side, well, the right side 15 minutes, the left side 10 minutes, and you can see the pads came out better. Right? And then let me show you the picture of what I have on my desk. So so you can see that I did this ones here. I did them before I got my new printer a few months ago. This is, I think it was the beginning of the year when I did this board. This is for the quick shifter for the R3. So this boards are thin-hole plated. Again, this is another thing, that if you want to plate thin-hole, plated thin holes, you have to be able to cover the holes. And if you do toner transfer, you can't do that. You have to have foil and resist. So there's another plus of why you should be using foil and resist, aside from being able to do really small components consistently. So this boards, this 5 plus this 2 in green, actually this whole middle section is thin-hole plated, including the bottom section. All of them are thin-hole plated, and you can see I have a lot of VS on the pad of the regulator here. I have a lot of VS in the middle of the processor as well, and VS all over the place pretty much. You can't really see it because the photoresist is really thick on that one. So VS all over the place, thin-hole plated, everything is thin-hole plated, so it's another plus, so you don't have to have connections all over the place. This one, thin-hole plated as well. These 4 boards are the same. The only difference is that I use this one for testing that green southern mask that I got. I didn't like it, so I went back to red. And when I did this ones, I didn't realize that my drills weren't going all the way through. So on these pads here, on the big ones for the voltage, for the 3 volts, didn't go all the way through, so they didn't plate all the way through because water couldn't get in. It was being blocked by air. So I ended up having to put on only a couple of them. This one was plated, this one was not, so I put a wire through it. So that is the only reason why sometimes I make the holes a little bigger, which are 0.5 millimeters or 19 mils. So in case I run into an issue, especially when there's only one via going to their side, I tend to make it a little bit bigger just in case there's a fault in it. I can always just run a wire. Otherwise, for regular ground vias, they're small. They're 0.3 millimeter vias. You can see the traces are really small as well. Those are 10 mil traces. Sorry, on this one is 12 mils. On the other ones are 10. Right. Same for this one. This one has component placement. The reason it looks weird is because it has toner reactive foil on top of it, and it's glossy, not glossy, but metallic. So you can see it here is golden, but because of the angle of the picture, you can't see it, so it looks dark. But if you move it to the side, it looks golden all over the place. This one here, where you go? This one here. So this one has just regular foil, but it's just white. It's not metallic, so it looks a lot better. This one's misspelled. Should be double T, single N. But, you know, I don't need that because it doesn't have that many components, and I'm only doing a couple, so I just did that one for, you know, just to show. These traces are 10 mils, and this board, or the entire section on the top, they're not through-hole plated. That's why the vias are a little bit bigger. They're 19 mils, or 3.5 millimeters, so I can run wires through them, through the other side, and I can connect them. So, you know, this is your 3-volt pads, 3.3 volts. This is your 5-volt driver for the servo. And these two are identical. They both have pads for the Tiny 84. Unfortunately, that one didn't work out because it has a shared output pins that I cannot use, so I ended up just switching the processor and rewiring this section. And this is the end result of the same board. 10 mil traces to 8 mil pads, and you can see all the traces are there. These little cones here are the wires going through the other side. Here's VS, 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 so everything's there. Is not through-hole plated. This one is the same as the other one. So, like I said, I tend to do two for no other reason than I have the space and I have the time. But this time I actually need 3, so I'm going to have to do one more since this one is not usable, although I'm going to repurpose it for something else since it's a fully functional board. Alright, so that is all I have. So you need a good printer, you need the proper paper, you need the proper laminator. Your board needs to be really, really clean. Paper needs to be flush or flat against the board itself, and your concentration of the developing solution has to be right. Otherwise, you are going to over expose it to chemicals that are going to soften the material itself, and then when you etch it, you are going to have issues where it's not going to be even, and it may even eat the copper underneath the traces if they're not fully attached correctly. And by doing it this way, you're only limited by how thick your copper is, because as it starts eating through the photoresist, if it's too thick, obviously at the top it starts getting thinner and thinner, so it may eat through it a little bit and make it thinner, not necessarily thicker, the height of the copper. So all my boards are 1 ounce coppers. So if you use 2 ounce copper, you're limiting yourself to bigger traces pretty much. So the less copper, the thinner the traces you can use, because etching doesn't take as long, so that it doesn't have a chance to eat through it. Alright guys, so that is all I have. Enjoy. Oh, and if you want to see any of the steps for doing any part of this boards, let me know, and I'll create a video just for that step and post it later.